Over the past 24 hours alone, Ukrainian regional authorities report at least 5 civilians killed and 30 wounded. Russian attacks spanned multiple oblasts: Kharkiv, Kherson, Sumy, Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, marking one of the deadliest days. The focus of the attacks was not just military targets. Russia again struck Ukraine's energy infrastructure.
For days now, Kyiv has been burning. Not military bases, not barracks, not command centers, homes, power stations, water lines, hospitals. Russia has been bombing Kyiv relentlessly, trying to crush the city into darkness and submission. Vladimir Putin even pulled out what his propagandists love to call his ultimate card, the Oreshnik system, boasting on state television, "We'll strike with Oreshnik and see what happens." Well, something did happen, just not what the Kremlin expected. Because while Russian drones and missiles slammed into Ukrainian civilian infrastructure, Kyiv did not break. It adapted, it watched, and then quietly, it rewrote the rules of the war. And the place where that rewrite became painfully obvious was not Kyiv. It was Oryol, a Russian city, deep inside Russia, a place that was never supposed to feel this war. Let's pause here, because this matters. For over 2 decades, Putin sold one core promise to his people. Wars may happen far away, but Russia itself is untouchable. Moscow is safe, St. Petersburg is safe, the industrial belt near the Urals is safe. That illusion collapsed in fire. On a cold night, footage began circulating online. A massive fireball ripped through the Oryol combined heat and power plant. Not a small explosion, not a brief flash, a sustained inferno, the kind engineers instantly recognize as catastrophic. Within minutes, reality set in. 225,000 civilians were suddenly without heat, in freezing conditions. In northern Russia, entire districts went dark. Apartments turned cold, rail systems stalled, panic spread, not because people love electricity, but because winter without heat in Russia is a death sentence, not an inconvenience. And this wasn't an accident. This wasn't random. This was surgical. Look closely at the footage. That fireball wasn't fuel storage. It wasn't a transformer yard. It hit the turbine hall, the heart of the plant, or possibly the high-pressure steam lines. If you know how thermal power plants work, you already know what that means. You don't just repair that overnight. Pressure imbalances cascade. Emergency shutdown protocols kick in. Entire systems collapse like dominoes. This wasn't about turning off the lights. It was about breaking the spine of the system. And the weapon that did it? Not a drone. A cruise missile disguised as one. Meet FLAMINGO. A name that sounds harmless, almost playful, like it belongs on a beach towel. It doesn't. FLAMINGO is Ukraine's domestically produced low-cost cruise missile, powered by a compact turbojet engine. Speed, 450 to 500 kilometers per hour. Range, hundreds, possibly thousands of kilometers. This thing doesn't loiter like a propeller drone. It doesn't buzz and wander. It arrives fast, low, quiet, and deadly precise. Its body is built from composite materials designed to absorb radar waves. Translation: Russian radars barely see it. So naturally, the big question exploded across Russian telegram channels. Where was the air defense? Oryol is not some backwater village. It sits on a strategic corridor toward Moscow. It should be wrapped in layered defenses, S-400s, Panzers, radar nets. On paper. In reality, FLAMINGO flew under the radar umbrella. Russian air defenses were designed to track ballistic missiles screaming down from the stratosphere or fighter jets blazing across the sky. FLAMINGO doesn't play that game. It hugs the terrain, slides through blind spots, locks onto a single, high-value target. And by the time anyone realizes what's happening, it's already too late. The aftermath forced an uncomfortable moment of honesty. Oryol's governor, Andrei Klitschkov, went on record admitting that entire districts had lost power, including railway infrastructure. That admission mattered because it shattered the Kremlin's favorite phrase, "Everything is under control." No, it wasn't. And the most chilling moment came next. Asked about shelters, the governor didn't point to bunkers or civil defense infrastructure. He told people to hide in hallways, bathrooms, and closets. Let that sink in. A Russian governor in 2025 telling citizens of the Russian Federation to hide in their closets because there are no shelters. That single sentence exposed the truth of Putin's 25-year promise of a strong, protected Russia. Strong on television, exposed in reality. And here's the part that makes this worse for the Kremlin. This wasn't the first time. Oryol had already been here before. On November 13th, Ukraine launched what it openly described as its largest and most significant significant strike inside Russian territory to date. This wasn't a swarm of hobby drones. This wasn't modified Soviet leftovers. This was the first confirmed operational deployment of Ukraine's own cruise missile family, Flamingo and Bars. And that night, the map of the war changed. Targets lit up across occupied Crimea and Zaporizhzhia. Command centers, fuel depots, airfields, gone, reduced to smoking ruins within hours. At the same time, the Oryol thermal plant collapsed again. Darkness spread, cities froze, people panicked, and Russia's most expensive air defense systems, the ones showcased in military parades and glossy brochures, failed. S-400s, Pantsers, silent, ineffective. Not because they didn't exist, but because they were never designed for this kind of threat. And what did the Kremlin do? The same thing it always does when reality intrudes. It screamed louder. State propagandist Vladimir Solovyov went on television, flailing wildly, threatening the world with Poseidon nuclear torpedoes, as if threatening global annihilation somehow fixes a power plant in Oryol. Think about the irony. A country unable to stop a low-flying cruise missile threatening nuclear apocalypse to save face. That's not strength, that's panic. For decades, Putin relied on one belief: distance equals safety. Ukraine could burn, but Moscow would sleep peacefully. Kyiv could freeze, but Russian industrial hubs would hum along untouched. That belief died on November 13th, because when Ukraine unveiled Flamingo, Bars, and Lyuty, it delivered a message far more powerful than any press release. Western aid is not the backbone of Ukraine's resistance anymore. Domestic production is, and that terrifies Moscow far more than NATO speeches ever could. Consider this detail carefully. Flamingo's reported range stretches far beyond Moscow, beyond St. Petersburg, beyond the Urals. That means every base, bunker, and command facility, once considered unreachable, is now within reach. Some variants reportedly carry bunker-busting warheads, capable of penetrating up to 10 meters of reinforced concrete. That's not designed for apartment blocks. That's designed for generals, oligarchs, and underground command rooms. Which brings us to the most uncomfortable truth of all. This was not terror. This was decapitation logic, precision, intent, message. The war is no longer one-directional. Residents of Oryol reported missile-like explosions followed by burning debris raining into courtyards, parking lots, and residential areas. Telegram channel Supernova Plus later confirmed what many already suspected: the debris belonged to Flamingo missiles. In a grim twist of irony, Russian air defenses may have only managed to intercept the missile after it had already completed its mission, spraying flaming fragments onto the very civilians they're supposed to protect. Protection failed, deterrence failed, narratives failed, and Oryol wasn't chosen randomly. It houses key defense industry facilities, including Oryol Techmash. More importantly, it's home to one of the main bases used to launch Iranian-made Shahed drones at Ukraine. 8 ground launch pads, according to reports. By striking Oryol, Ukraine didn't just retaliate, it cut the source of the terror. This was symmetry, this was strategy, and it sent a message Moscow cannot ignore. Because while Russia launched 138 UAVs and an Iskander missile at Ukraine on the night of November 12th to 13, Ukraine answered with something far more dangerous than volume. It answered with capability. And this was only the beginning. Ukraine didn't just respond with firepower, it responded with timing, coordination, and intent. This was not revenge. This was not rage. This was a carefully planned dismantling of Russia's ability to function. While Russian missiles were still slamming into Ukrainian cities, Ukraine struck back by simultaneously targeting command centers, logistics hubs, terror launch bases, and energy arteries. And that simultaneity matters, because when everything is hit at once, generals don't panic because something is destroyed. They panic because nothing makes sense anymore. Putin's generals weren't just confused, they were overwhelmed. This wasn't a single front collapsing, this was system failure. Let's be very clear about something uncomfortable. Russia is not only collapsing on the battlefield, it is collapsing internally, economically, technologically, and socially. And the most brutal proof of that collapse isn't even happening on land. It's happening at sea. According to multiple reports, including Bloomberg, around 500 million barrels of Russian oil are currently stranded in tankers across the world's oceans. 500 million barrels, floating, unsold, going nowhere. Why? Because Ukraine's drone and missile strikes didn't just hit refineries randomly. They hit processing choke points, chemical and petrochemical plants in places like Orsk and Stavropol, facilities essential for turning crude oil into usable, sellable products. So Russia is exporting more oil than ever. and has nowhere to sell it. No buyers, no processing capacity, sanctions tightening, insurance withdrawn. This is what economic strangulation looks like, not in theory, but in real time. Oil is the bloodstream of Putin's war machine, and right now, that blood is pooling uselessly in tankers, burning money by the day. This is not a temporary inconvenience. This is a logistical nightmare. And here's where the story gets darker and almost tragically ironic. Russia's interceptor aircraft, tasked with protecting Moscow and key regions, are grounded not because of enemy fire, but because of fuel shortages. Fighter jets don't fly on patriotism, they fly on high-octane aviation fuel, and Ukraine understood that. Let's rewind to Christmas Eve. While much of the world was distracted, Storm Shadow missiles and Ukrainian drones thundered across the skies of Rostov, Volgograd, and Krasnodar. Those weren't symbolic targets. Those regions supply fuel to armored units defending Moscow, air defense generators, fighter jet squadrons. Ukraine's logic was brutally simple. If the refinery burns, the jets stay on the ground. And it worked. This wasn't a press-a-button-and-hope attack. This was a ghost operation. Radar data later confirmed that Ukrainian Su-24M tactical bombers penetrated deep into Russian airspace, launched Storm Shadow missiles, and returned safely, undetected. Let that sink in. Russian air defenses didn't just fail to intercept the missiles, they failed to detect the aircraft that launched them. That's not a tactical mistake. That's a systemic collapse of aerospace defense. Technically speaking, Storm Shadow is a nightmare for radar operators. After launch, it doesn't climb, it dives, flying at just 30 to 40 meters above ground, hugging terrain, skimming treetops. While Russia's S-300 and S-400 systems were scanning the skies for high-altitude threats, death arrived below the radar horizon. By the time operators realized what was happening, it was already over. More than a dozen explosions across strategic depth regions confirmed what Russian officials didn't want to admit. Their layered air defense doctrine collapsed in a single night. Billion-dollar systems turned into spectators, and the weapon choice mattered. Storm Shadow carries a 450-kilo broach penetrator warhead. It works in two stages. The penetrator punches through reinforced concrete or steel. The main charge detonates inside the structure. Ukraine didn't hit warehouses. It didn't hit parking lots. It hit distillation towers, the heart of oil refineries. At Novoshakhtinsk, the atmospheric distillation units were destroyed. Without them, the refinery becomes nothing more than an oil storage yard. No refining, no fuel, no aviation supply. And repairing those towers? Months, possibly years. This wasn't destruction, this was long-term paralysis. Now zoom out, because the implications are far bigger than burning fuel tanks. Russian air sorties will inevitably decline. Pilots can't fly without fuel. Aircraft can't take off on promises. That means less pressure on Ukrainian cities and breathing room for Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines. This is what military strategists call strategic strangulation. Quiet, unforgiving, effective. But perhaps the most devastating blow wasn't even military. It was technological. When the FLAMINGO missile struck the Oryol thermal power plant, it didn't hit old Soviet-era machinery. It hit a modern gas turbine. And that's where Russia's real nightmare begins. Gas turbines are among the most complex machines on Earth. Thousands of precision-engineered components, micron-level tolerances, temperatures hotter than molten lava, rotation speeds exceeding the speed of sound. Russia's modern energy infrastructure, built in the early 2000s, was installed during its honeymoon with the West. German Siemens turbines, American General Electric systems. That means the DNA of Russia's electricity grid is Western. And when the war started, those companies didn't just leave. They took maintenance software, service teams, spare parts, technical support with them. Even China is watching, with quiet concern. Beijing wanted a strong Russia to distract the West, not a bleeding partner struggling to keep its lights on. To China, Russia no longer looks like a bear. It looks like wounded prey. And deploying North Korean soldiers won't fix a technological collapse. So here we are. Putin's Oreshnik failed to intimidate the world. Ukraine's flamingos punctured Russia's arteries. Air defenses failed. Energy systems collapsed. Economic pressure mounted, and intelligence reports suggest Ukraine is ramping production of these jet-powered missiles to maximum capacity. What looks like a few flamingos today could become a storm tomorrow. The lights are going out for Russia, and this storm, it's just beginning. Now we want to hear from you. What do you think this means for the future of the war and for Russia itself? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you found this analysis valuable, support the work by liking the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. Stay informed.